We're live.
Well, good evening, social media and everyone out there, boys and girls, and welcome to my favorite time of the week. It's happy hour, 8 to 9 on Wednesday. With me and the gentlemen, we cut it up. We chop up sports for the week, and there's a lot of sports to chop up. So let me not waste any more time, but I do want to introduce the fellas. I'm going to start with Mr. David Burnett. Good evening, David. How you doing?
And Chuck, good evening to you. I'm doing great. The city of Indianapolis is buzzing with the Jeff Saturday selection, and I know we'll talk about that.
Oh, we will.
But it's an interesting selection, and it's an interesting time here in the Circle City, the sports capital of the world.
Well, that's good. That's good to know, David. That's good to know. Hey, Mr. Larry Abels, good evening. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, Chuck, I'm fine, man. How are you?
I'm great. I can't wait to get started. And look at that fine gentleman in the nice blazer, looking great. Earl, you look refreshed, and you got a little bit of a tan. Earl, how you doing? And have you been anywhere lately?
I'm doing fabulous, Charles. I just came back from the Dominican Republic.
You have? Wow. No wonder you're grinning from ear. Grinning from ear to ear. Well, that's great. Did you sneak any shortstops in your jacket on the way back to help our national out? They have a lot of ball players down in the D.
Oh, no. No, I didn't sneak any shortstops.
Shortstops back, right? To the past customs. Well, listen, let's get into it. Let's start out with the National Football League. And I got to tell you guys, I was a little surprised at the Jets beating Buffalo. And I really want to start out with that game. And the reason I'm surprised is I think the Buffalo, I've said this all year, I thought that the best team in football and have been all season. And even though the Jets were winning, I hadn't taken them that seriously. So I want to go around the panel and get your thoughts on the Buffalo Jets game. Were you surprised? And are the Jets for real? And I'll start with Larry.
Oh, I think the Jets are definitely for real. I think the surprise was when they actually lost last week to the Patriots, but they played very well after the first couple of games. And I didn't necessarily think they beat Buffalo, but I expected them to give them a good game, and they did.
Yeah, that was a big win for them. Wow, I don't think the quarterback had a touchdown in that game on Sunday, which is surprising. How about you, Earl? Are you surprised at that win by the Jets? And are the Jets serious? And should Buffalo be concerned?
Buffalo to be concerned. One, because there's supposedly an injury going on with their quarterback. Buffalo should be concerned. To answer your other question, the Jets. I can't say that the Jets are completely for real. I can tell you that their defense is for real. Their quarterback's still shaky as far as I am concerned. But I was definitely surprised that the Jets beat Buffalo most definitely.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. They got a cornerback, a rookie from David's, one of the teams that David supported last year, Cincinnati, named Sauce Gardner. And Sauce has been shutting down guys every week now that he takes on whoever he takes on. Diggs did not get in the end zone this weekend. David, what did you think of that game? And do you think the Jets are serious?
Robert Saleh, the coach, said he was taking receipts, and he wasn't lying. I think the Jets are for real because the National Football League, unlike other sports leagues, you can see changes from year to year. We had no idea the Cincinnati Bengals would make the Super Bowl last year, and they did. The Jets could go all the way. I know it sounds unrealistic, but the Bengals were even more unrealistic than the Jets are right now. So they're legitimate.
So that conference is really tough. Where they had New England and Miami and Buffalo and the Jets, etc. Do you think the Jets will make the playoffs, Larry?
I think it's going to be tough because I think if a lot's going to depend on injuries. Like Earl mentioned, Allen suffered an injury and he may miss some time, and that's probably going to hurt them if he does. Just like Tua needs to stay healthy. I think it's Tua and Allen stay healthy. It's going to be difficult. But every team in that conference, every team in the East of both conferences is above 500, except for one that here in my hometown. Well, all of the teams in the AFC East are above 500, so it's a pretty good battle there.
Yeah. How about you, Earl? I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think the Jets will make the playoffs?
Barring injury, if they don't lose anymore, they really got hurt by that running back injury. That running back they had would have definitely put it. But to answer your question, if no one gets hurt, if I can put that in, yes, the Jets will.
Good. David, what do you think?
They have a chance to make the playoffs. And as I said before, every year there's some team that's unexpected. So they're in the conversation for the unexpected team. So it's very possible.
Well, David, I'm going to stay with you again. I want to talk about there was some activity this week in Indianapolis as it relates to the Indianapolis Colts with the firing of Frank Reich and the hiring of Saturday and another loss, obviously, that precipitated that. So what's going on in Indianapolis? What did you think of the firing? Were you surprised? And were you really surprised at who they hired?
I was shocked, but I'm not disappointed. Actually, I'm encouraged, believe it or not, by what's done. Frank Reich had to go. There's no question he had to be fired. That was the worst Colts performance in the Frank Reich era. Worst this year, worse than when they got shut out by the Jaguars earlier this year. This was bad. Now, Jeff Saturday, is it a shocking hire? Absolutely shocking. But Jeff Saturday has some of the intangibles that you're supposed to have as a coach. You know, you hear all the time the discussions about an offensive-minded coach. Blah, 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 blah. Shut up. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it. Being a head coach and being successful is about being a leader and a leader of men, someone who can get players to respond to the urgency of the circumstance. We see that with a number of coaches that don't have anything to do with this high-powered offense, and et cetera, et cetera. Jeff Saturday has the intangibles. He can speak well. He can motivate. He's a former Colt. If he, and plus it undermines the fact when we lay it all on one coach, there's still a quarterback coach. There's still a line coach, offensive line coach, defensive line coach, linebacker coach, defensive back coach, special teams coach. There's a lot of people involved. And what the head coach is supposed to do, not some damn offensive-minded wizard. A head coach, a real head coach, is supposed to lead men, period. Wow. And I think under that standard, Jeff Saturday has as good a chance to be successful as anybody else.
Wow. Well said, David. Larry, what are your thoughts? And do you think that the players will take him seriously coming from the booth, from the telephone or the television booth to the head coaching position?
Well, my thoughts about just Saturday or the firing or the whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing.
I think I shared in our group talk that I expected Wright to be fired.
No,
after he got his vote of confidence last week. It almost always happens when people get votes of confidence.
Right.
It's only good for that day. But with respect to Saturday, it seems very unusual to bring somebody in. It's almost a slap in the face to the other coaches that are there. And it seems like it will be a challenge for him to take control of the team this quick. Now,
right.
The guys on ESPN say he's a great guy, and everybody says they like him, and he seems to know football. That just really seems like it shouldn't work.
Right.
I have nothing against Saturday, but it seems an awkward way to do it, business.
Right. Hey, Earl,
can I say this real quickly before you
go
go
ahead.
to Earl? Just to respond to that point. What were the Colts doing up to this point? They were the worst team, arguably, in the damn league. Can't even score in the first half of any damn game. Head coach got to go. Jeff Saturday cannot possibly be worse than that. He can't possibly be worse than that. That's all I want to say.
Well, I'm not going to argue that point, David, although they were a win away last year against Jacksonville from making the playoffs. And quite frankly, they didn't have a quarterback this year. That quarterback they brought in from Atlanta, he was done. And that backup quarterback could be the worst backup quarterback in the National Football League. So what I don't
probably
and they lost their MVP candidate, which is the running back. So my question would be, what was the coach supposed to do? What was the coach supposed to do with the hand?
Everybody was healthy in game one. Mm-hmm. Everybody was healthy game one. What did they do? They laid an egg with a 0 beside it against Jacksonville. A disgrace. A disgrace.
Woo. So Earl, what did you think of the firing in Indianapolis, and what did you think of the hiring of Saturday? Were you surprised?
I think I thought that he definitely should have been fired. And as far as the hiring, I mean, they tell you there's certain channels you have to go through, certain stages you have to go through before you should be a coach. He may not fit all those levels, but there are always exceptions. Just like in the NBA, you have to go through some channels, but they just gave Nash here's a job, So maybe they took that same attitude. Hey, Jeff Saturday, hey, here's a job,
Right.
So I don't know how to hire a coach in the NFL, how that goes. So I can't comment on that. But I definitely think they should have got rid of Reich.
So given that just happened, and given some other performances of teams throughout the season, and I want to go and get your thoughts and go around the panel, who's the next coach that will be fired? And will that happen before the year end? And I'll start with you, David.
The coach that has to go is the coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
I agree.
And ironically, the Colts are playing the Raiders, Josh McDaniels. The Colts are playing the Raiders this Sunday. So you got a matchup of Josh McDaniels, who was offered the Colts job before Frank Reich took it. So there's a lot of irony in here. So I could see Jeff Saturday winning in Las Vegas against the woeful Josh McDaniels. It's very possible.
Yeah, I don't understand that team. That team was in the playoffs last year. The Raiders, they added Devontae Adams, and they seem to be worse. Larry, what's your thoughts on who the next coach you think will be fired, and will that happen before the year is out?
I was thinking the Detroit Lions coach will probably go. It seemed like there was a lot of support for him, and he, had his team all hyped and everything. But they're like 2-6.
Right.
He seems next on the chopping block tonight.
Interesting. That's interesting. Earl, who do you think will be the next coach to be fired? And do you think that will happen before the year is out?
It may not happen before the year is out. You guys may think I have such a heavy bias, but I think the next coach tried will be Ron Rivera for the Commanders, truthfully. Hope that answers the question.
Hey, Earl, I was thinking that too, but with the team possibly being sold and everything, I don't know if he would do it at this time. But I don't know why. I don't know why he would necessarily be back next year unless something changes in the next 2 weeks.
We should have won that game on Sunday. Okay, so I find something to be fascinating to me, and I just want to get you all's thoughts. You know how I respect you guys' opinions and the way you guys assess things that are going on in the National Football League, and I just want to get your thoughts. And it's about the quarterback spot. So I was just looking at some numbers from this past weekend. For example, Mahomes was 43 for 68. Brady was 36 for 58. Of course, Malik Willis was 5 for 16 for 50 yards, but they only lost in overtime. Justin Fields was 17 for 28, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and he had 176 yards rushing. Of course, they lost, but I mean, he's making progress. So, what is going on with the quarterback position in the National Football League? And do you guys have any thoughts about that whole range of performances? And I'll start with you, Larry.
Well, let me talk about the Mahomes throwing 68 passes and against Malik Willis's team.
I know it.
All right. They should have Kansas City should have lost that game.
I know.
You know, Tennessee's coach, for some reason, stopped giving Henry the ball in the second half. He had 7 touches in the third and fourth quarter. And he was trying to let Malik Willis pass. I don't get it. Mahomes was held in check. I mean, had they gave Henry the ball, he probably would have only thrown 50 passes and they would have lost the game.
Right.
But that was just such an oddity. And Willis does not look like an NFL quarterback at this time.
That's 2 weeks. That's 2 weeks in a row he had that kind of a performance. Last week he won because he beat the Texans. This week they lost in overtime to Kansas City, which is amazing. But I agree with you. He doesn't look like a.
Oh, had they gave Henry had 92 yards at halftime, and they stopped giving him the ball. If they stopped him on first down in the second half, they wouldn't give him the ball again. They would let Willis pass twice, which was like not working. I don't know. As far as the other game, I saw some of Chicago's game, and I thought Fields played very well.
He did.
Mm-hmm. And let me ask you guys something. Do you think, seriously, except for possibly Lamar Jackson, any quarterback in the NFL could look like a pro quarterback with less blocking as that boy Willis had? They were not blocking him. He had his last 2 games, and no one been blocking for him. How's he going to look like a professional quarterback?
My problem with him, Earl, is he held the ball too long. When nothing was happening, he would get sacked. You know, instead of, he didn't have the wherewithal to throw the ball away when he went, or maybe they should have called plays. But
I've got to respond.
Giving it to Henry.
And
okay, we're gonna get to you, David. Hold on a second, Earl. Any thoughts about the quarterbacks and the range of performances and the?
No. Let's get to David. It's common sense. Some people have the ability. Some people have the time and the receivers to throw. Some people do not have the time, or some people do not have the receivers. Some people have a better running game, and it may be better for them to run. So why throw the ball all the time? So it's no big deal. It's just a situation.
So balance doesn't mean much from your perspective in terms of a quality team having a little bit of both.
That's not the question you asked me. Are you asking me that question now?
No. You meant.
Are you asking me, does balance make a difference? Because that's not the same question that you asked me. You asked me what I thought about the different ranges that people are using as far as passing. Right. You say nothing about no rushing or no balancing. So are you asking me about balances now?
Well, no, but good response. Good response. David, what's your thoughts about what Larry said and his whole
well, let me just say
range?
this. Let me say this about I got to speak for Malik Willis because
good luck.
Well, first of all, he came out of college fairly well acclaimed. Liberty University is not the top of the heap anyway. But that said, a lot of quarterbacks come from smaller schools and less prestigious schools. Mm-hmm. He had 2 games. He's a rookie. He doesn't get first team snaps. Last year, if we'd have applied the same criteria to the brother that's running the Chicago Bears, who had less than sterling statistics, probably on par, if not worse than Malik Willis, and now we're calling him somebody who's on the come up. I'm not going to say Malik Willis can't play in the NFL. He can't play right now very well. He's a backup and a rookie and just thrown in because the quarterback is hurt. I think he has potential. I'm not going to write him off. Not
my
at all.
statement was
Okay,
my statement was he doesn't look like a quarterback now.
Right.
That was my statement.
And we were crushing Justin Fields when he was playing bad too.
At this point, I'm still defending Malik Willis. Whether he looks like every freaking rookie quarterback has moments when they look like they shouldn't be in the league, and that's a fact. Every single one. Peyton Manning as a rookie threw 27 interceptions.
Yeah.
So let's not go crazy about the performance of a guy in their first year and how they might look right now. But to get to the heart of your question, and I've lost a little bit of it.
So the question is really is that the numbers were so all over the place, and I just found that fascinating that a guy would throw the ball 68 times and 58 times, and I just thought of successful teams having a little bit more balance, and I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that.
Well, now Andy Reid will do what Andy Reid does. You never know what Andy Reid is going to do as a play caller. You never know. 68 passes, that's absurd. That's absurd. Kansas City is a team that's a little bit in trouble. They've got to do some things extra if we want to see them in the Super Bowl again. I'm not certain they're going to make the Super Bowl, but are they still a good team? Do they still have one of the all-time great quarterbacks? Yeah. Yes. Do they have a very good head coach? Yeah. Do they have a pretty good offensive coordinator? Yeah. But does that mean they're going to win this year? No. Doesn't mean that at all. Doesn't mean it at all. The Jets can freaking win.
There was such a contrast in that game, though, because one team couldn't throw it all. The other team threw every play. I mean,
crazy. And
the score went into overtime. It went into overtime, which was incredible.
And they put the defense on the field. I remember when Buddy, who's the defensive coordinator for
Buddy Ryan.
Buddy Ryan, he went up to his offensive coordinator one time and punched him in the face during the game because the quarterback was throwing the ball so much that his defense was on the field so much, and it was unfair to the defense because near the end of the game, they're all worn out. And so that's what I was wondering about the ranges and all the quarterback throws and the defense is back on the field, and is that fair? And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I probably didn't phrase that question right, but anyway, thank you for your responses. Let's talk about best performance, and I know you're going to mention Mixon, but best performances of the weekend. And I'm going to start with David. And David, what was your best performance of the weekend?
I have it written down, and you've already stolen my thunder. It had to be Joe Mixon. You score 5 touchdowns, you're the player of the week, period. Cincinnati Bengals wouldn't be much without him. No matter how much they continue to tout Joe Cool Burrow, he's got the swag. Shut up. Joe Mixon is the Joe.
He had a good week. He had a good week. 5 touchdowns, 4 rushing, 1 pass catching. He was phenomenal. How about you, Larry? Anybody stand out? Who was your standout player of the week?
No, Mixon. 153 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, or whatever. You got to go with him. I was looking at Henry was having a great game, and then they stopped giving him the freaking ball. But I'll tell you who had a good game as a receiver was Devontae Adams, because I think he had he caught about 10 passes for 146 yards. By far his best game in the Raiders uniform.
I think they blew another 17-point lead in that game. They were up 17 and lost. And I think that's the 3rd time they've been up 17 and lost the game this season. I don't know what's going on in Vegas, but something ain't working. Earl, any thoughts in terms of who you thought or who stood out in your mind as a top performer this weekend?
No, I mean, obviously we have to go with Mixon. The other selection would be rather whack. But I do want to ask a question to you guys. At the beginning of the year, everybody was on the Los Angeles Chargers quarterback tip, but he seems kind of mediocre this year. Am I not right?
Well, they're 5-3 out there out west.
I'm not talking about them.
Well, remember he suffered a rib injury in the 2nd or 3rd game, and he hasn't really been the same since then. I think he started off well the first couple of games, but he had a rib injury, and he's never sat out any. and I don't know what his status is now because he just plays. But I do notice that a difference.
He's not kicking ass though, right?
No, ever since he's been hurt, he hasn't been the same.
Okay, all right.
Well, again, I don't think he's been that bad though. Again, they're still 5-3. He's the quarterback of that team. They're in that West. Remember at the beginning of the year, that was supposed to be the tough division. They got a big game coming up this weekend against the 49ers. We'll see how he does against them.
Charles, you're just trying to pick with me. You know the way people were talking about him. He's not playing nowhere near the way they were telling him at the end of the year. I don't care what you say.
Is okay. All right, cool. Hey, listen, let me ask you another question. You guys said Mixon, but you don't think Justin Fields had as good a weekend as Mixon? Hold on a minute.
No.
He had 3 touchdowns. He had no picks. He ran for 178 yards. It's the most yardage of a quarterback ever
in the regular season.
And so now they lost the game, but he had a hell of a day. A hell of a day. Yes, and I would even argue this day was I don't know if it was as good or the Mixon's or not, but he had a hell of a day, man.
Yeah, what did he get
I think they figured out a little formula. Huh?
We only had about 120, 130 yards passing, right?
170 some yards with 3 touchdowns.
Oh, passing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought it was less than that.
No. 170 with 3 touchdowns and no picks, and he rushed for 178 yards or something.
Okay. I thought he had rushed for more than he passed for. I thought he was like 128 or something like that.
Now is that a hell of a game compared to what he was playing earlier, or is that just a hell of a game in general to you? I'm just asking.
When somebody's done something the best in the history of the NFL, I think that's compared to all players ever, right?
He had a great game. I was trying to look for non-quarterbacks,
right?
But he had a good game, no doubt.
Right. Okay.
He had a very good game, but it does not surpass Joe Mixon.
5 touchdowns, but yeah. So, so in closing, in terms of the National Football League, give me, with all the changes and Buffalo losing, give me your top 3, and I'll start with you, David, and go around the group in terms of your top 3.
Philadelphia remains number 1, undefeated, the only undefeated team. And here's my number 2 team. And I know I will be criticized for it, but it is what it is. It's the NFL. The Minnesota Vikings are the number 2 team in the NFL right now. Now, it might change because there are, 8 more games to go?
Yeah, 7-1. Yep.
But right now, it's the Minnesota Vikings at number 2. Number 3, the Buffalo Bills. Number 4, the Miami Dolphins. That's my order at this
top 4. Oh, that's good. That's good. I still thought Washington should have beat them. But anyway, Larry, what's your top 3 teams?
Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Buffalo.
Minnesota, huh? Earl, what's your top 3? By the way, Minnesota plays Buffalo this weekend, so we're going to really see what Minnesota is made up of because their schedule has been pretty soft up until this point. Earl, what do you think?
I would take Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Buffalo.
I'm going to chime in. I had Philly, Buffalo, and the Ravens. I think the Ravens have started to get their act together, and look out for them. Any other thoughts about the National Football League before we move on? All right. Well, let's talk about college football. Look, before we get into touch base on the Georgia-Tennessee game, which I was disappointed in Tennessee's performance, what I want to ask the panel is, what was a bigger win? Was the LSU win over Alabama or the Notre Dame win over Clemson? So Notre Dame beating Clemson or LSU beating Alabama, what was the bigger game? Larry, I'll start with you.
So you mean like what was a bigger upset or a bigger surprise?
Bigger surprise, correct.
Okay, Notre Dame over Clemson. I thought, unranked team, and Clemson seems historically has been powerhouse, and they couldn't handle Notre Dame, so I'm going with that game.
Yeah, I'm glad for Freeman. Freeman's making a comeback up there in South Bend. How about you, Earl?
Yeah, I'll probably go get with the same game that Larry went with.
How about you, David? I know you're not far from South Bend, but what'd you think in terms of a bigger win?
I think LSU over Alabama. Alabama is the standard for college football. And LSU beating Alabama, considering LSU's current record, and Alabama's record, it ended Alabama's opportunity to get into the playoffs. We had better not see the Alabama Crimson Tide in the Final Four. We had better not see that. And they got knocked out legitimately by LSU.
You know, Larry was a little bit of a prophet when he said to me last week, TCU. I didn't really think TCU could get into this mix, and it was only a week later. TCU is right in the mix. So, Larry, you must have looked around the corner and saw something coming. Do you guys okay with Georgia, OSU, Michigan, and TCU as the top 4 teams?
Absolutely.
They're the only undefeated teams in the top 25. So, I definitely have to go with them. The thing about TCU, they will have to remain unbeaten in order to make it to this tournament, unfortunately.
They play at Texas this weekend, and game day is going to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I agree with that, because we can't treat TCU like we treat Cincinnati. Cincinnati was always a question mark because they were not a part of the Power Five. TCU has been a part of the Power Five for quite a few years now. They are not an outsider. They are a good football program and have been. I think the Big 12 catches a lot of flack because they're the Big 12. They're the conference that scores all the points and can't stop anybody. David, TCU is a pretty good football program.
I'm with TCU. That's all fine and dandy. But if it comes between them having one loss and Tennessee having one loss, Tennessee's getting in.
I can't go with Tennessee. I can't go with Tennessee because they have a 105,000 seat stadium, because they have a certain amount of tradition. I can't do it. My eyeball test says
I'm talking about what the posters will do.
TCU is better than Tennessee.
They will
head to head. I would take TCU over Tennessee.
No, I think what Larry is saying is, I think what Larry is saying is, at the end of the year, if Tennessee only has one loss, that means they would have won the SEC playoffs and so forth.
Right.
And if TCU has a loss,
they're going to knock them out.
Right. Don't you?
That's the reason why we need the 12-team playoff now. I mean,
no argument there. I'm just saying to winnow
this down to 4 teams every freaking year. We have now eliminated Alabama. Thank the Lord for that. We have eliminated Alabama, and we have probably eliminated Clemson. Thank God for that. Let's bring some new blood in there.
But if you had an 18 tournament, Alabama would be back in the mix, and I would be afraid of them.
I'm not afraid of Alabama this year. They're not that good. They have what Alabama has that nobody else has is Nick Saban, the best coach in the history of college football.
They have a great quarterback too.
They need a lot of help. They need a lot of teams to lose.
I know. I agree with that. But if there was an 8-team tournament, they wouldn't need as many, right? I'm just saying that's what you.
Well, maybe. We don't know that. Right. I think the selection committee is going. When this opens up, they're not going to just lavish everything on the SEC. I think they're going to spread it around because it's in the interest for it to be a national tournament. That's the interest financially and everything else.
Those other big conferences to get multiple teams in there. That's when they have 3 SEC.
I think you're dealing with fans who are tired of the same damn thing. The college basketball tournament outrates the football championship by far, and that's part of the reason.
Hey, Earl, were you look? If I had a chance to go make a bet, I would have lost my shirt. I would have taken Tennessee in the 9 points against Georgia. I just wasn't buying all the Georgia hype. I didn't think that the Georgia quarterback was as good as this guy Hooker. I was wrong. Earl, what were your thoughts about the Tennessee-Georgia game, and were you surprised that Georgia beat Tennessee so handedly?
I thought it was a pretty good game. To answer your first question, yes, I also was surprised that they beat them handily. But after talking to you off camera about the quarterback, I'm not as big on Georgia's quarterback as you think he is. You think he's in the Heisman running. I don't. But I am surprised that Georgia beat them handily. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah. Larry, were you surprised at that? Do you have any thoughts about that game?
I thought Georgia was the best team. I thought they should have been ranked number 1 anyway.
Right.
I know they lost a lot of players to the pros last year.
Right.
They still look like they had a good team to me. So maybe the ease that they beat Tennessee. But as we've been talking, Tennessee's rep a lot of this because they beat Alabama. Maybe Alabama isn't that good.
As good, right? Maybe. How about you, David? Any thoughts about that game?
My daughter told me, my daughter, the Georgia Bulldog, told me that it was not even close to be a contest, and she was correct. And I need to listen to her more.
That is the message. Well, Earl brought up a subject. The question is, who would you, in terms of the Heisman race? I think if Georgia runs the table and Stetson Bennett, who looked good the other day, Stetson was he was 17 for 25 for 257 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he ran a touchdown in. So if they ran the table, why wouldn't Stetson Bennett be in the Heisman conversation? Larry, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I really can't comment on
the Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, because I would say TCU's quarterback has played well, but he gets no mention because he's at a smaller school. And I think it should be the best player, but it's hard to, it seems like whoever's winning at an SEC school or maybe a Big Ten school is going to get it.
Right. Earl, I know your feelings, but you want to add anything else to this?
No, nothing that's going to be intelligent, so let's move on.
David, any thoughts on that? Again, if Georgia ran the table and Bennett's their quarterback and he's playing well and they win all these big games, shouldn't he be considered?
He'll be considered. And the reason, because he's the quarterback of the number 1 team in the nation and the defending national champion. The problem is, as they mentioned on TV, he looks like a kicker, and he doesn't look like he has a career post University of Georgia. Right. That's going to hurt him. Hendon Hooker, by the way, oh my God. I thought he was Heisman worthy. No, he's not.
I agree. Yeah,
that's because Charles picked him up to you.
So are y'all going to throw him out because he went up against a very good defense?
I am.
Yes. I need a quarterback up.
I'm never going to throw him out. I never was big on him in the first place.
Okay.
I am. And that's why I like this kid Young from Alabama. I don't care what the game. That guy plays big at big moments. I don't care what his size is. I don't care what the odds are. That kid makes plays, and they should have lost. I mean, he made a last drive in that game to get them back. I don't know. I like that kid Young.
Do you think he'll be a first-round draft pick? Let me ask you that.
I do, Earl. I do. Even though he's small, I do. I really do. And remember, he's only a junior. And he won the Heisman last year, and he's only a junior, and he's got 1 more year.
Well, this is the year he has to come out. He has to come out this year. He cannot afford
with
to.
NIL, they pay with NIL now, David. They pay well in college now.
Well, but they don't.
You don't play like NFL.
That's true.
I think he needs to come out now. I don't think he needs to wait another year.
No, I think if he comes out now, this year, he won't go in the first round.
No, he's going in the first round.
Any other thoughts about college football or anything that happened over the past weekend that you guys want to comment about? I guess we'll all now be waiting to wait for the Ohio State Michigan game in a couple of weeks. Is the next big.
And that's going to be a heck of a game.
It's going to be a heck of. I agree with you.
Just real quickly, real quick note. Sitting here in flyover country, in Big Ten land. Michigan and Ohio State better frickin' make the playoffs this time, as opposed to 2 SEC teams. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. If both of them are undefeated, I think they might have a shot at that because the SEC just got.
One of them will have a defeat. One will have a defeat, and the other will win the Big Ten.
And if Tennessee wins the
and nobody
SEC,
from the Big Ten
Tennessee
West
and Georgia will be there.
No.
We'll debate that. We'll debate that later too, because I don't know how
TCU, because they're going to be undefeated.
All right. Well, let's switch to the NBA, the National Basketball Association. Again, Chuck Snowden was wrong. I thought a Mecca was going to get that job in that dumpster fire called the New Jersey or the Brooklyn Nets, but he did not. They named Jacques Vaughn the head coach, took the interim tag off. So let's go around the panel. Let me see what you guys' thoughts are about the Nets in general with all of the activity over the last week. And I mean with Kyrie's suspension, with the firing, with the hiring of Jacques Vaughn, the worst defense in the National Basketball League. Larry, any thoughts about what's going on in Brooklyn?
Well, I think finally suspending Irving after all of this time might sort of set them on the right track. With respect to the coach, I think they did want to hire Udoka, but they sent it up the flagpole, and they got the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, so they decided not to do that. So Jacques Vaughn is hired this year and through next year, so he's got a 2-year deal. Right. I think they're in trouble because they play no defense.
Yeah, they don't.
And I don't know what the answer to that will be, because they play no defense.
Ironically, though, their defense has been a lot better since Kyrie's been suspended. Their defense has gone. I mean, they're one of the better defensive teams because Kyrie played. They were the worst team when he was in the lineup. They're not almost the worst, the worst.
What I'll say about them is, and I've said something similar about the Lakers. They had two guys that are with Cleveland now, LeVert and I can't think of the big guy with the afro.
Right, Gerard
Allen.
Allen.
Okay.
Gerard Allen.
They had good players, and when they got Harden, they had a 3-team deal. Harden's gone now. Kyrie Irving's not there, and those two guys are balling for Cleveland. And Allen plays defense. He throws shots away. And LeVert's a good shooter. And they had a decent coach there too.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. So, Earl, any thoughts about that dumpster fire called the Brooklyn Nets?
I think you said everything when you used the phrase dumpster fire. I mean, what more they can say? It's a dumpster fire. Right. They don't have any. They only have 2 players. And one of them psychotic.
So I know you try to deny this on the show, but I do know you are a Laker fan. Let me ask you this question.
I never denied I was a Laker fan.
Okay. All right.
I made it adamant that I am not a LeBron James fan.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a controversial question. Would you take Kyrie Irving on the Laker team?
Yeah. Yes.
I think I would too.
He's better than anybody they have.
I would agree.
They need to improve. He might not be the perimeter shooter that the Lakers definitely need, but anybody can use this gentleman's scoring ability.
And maybe LeBron can make him behave or manage him to behave. Anyway, I feel the same way too, Earl. David, what did you think of Brooklyn? And I see you shaking your head. And what would you think of if, should the Lakers try to get Kyrie?
You know what? Kyrie is the same as Kanye West. He's a psycho. Any team that would trade for Kyrie Irving is making a tremendous mistake. He is self-centered. He's selfish. And there was a report out on one of the blogs, one of the reporting blogs, that said that Kyrie ignored all of the offensive calls
10 of them
from Steve Nash.
10 in a row.
10 in a row.
Yeah.
I saw that too.
I mean, that's absurd. That's a self-centered non-thinking, irresponsible gentleman. I don't care what his talent is. The talent level in the NBA is going up. That doesn't mean that at 11 years in the league that he's still just as good. Yes, he's talented, but he's psychotic. He's not even guaranteed to play every game. He's already now missed 5 games.
Hey, what if the 10 times? What if the 10 times the coach, the play he called was whack? And Tyree said, "I'm not running this whack play." I mean, is that a possibility?
I wonder if Al was 1-6 during that stretch too.
It wasn't.
So Kyrie was calling what it was.
Kyrie is trouble for any team, and the Lakers are an absolute dumpster fire themselves.
I don't disagree.
Why do they want a piece of the dumpster fire of Brooklyn?
Because when LeBron and him were together, because when him and LeBron was together, they won a title, and because LA, because they're strapped and all these other things, it couldn't be any worse. It couldn't be any worse.
Who can't use the guy that averages 25 points a game?
They're the worst team in the NBA, Dave.
Who can't use the guy that can average 25 points a game?
Right.
Well, Brooklyn can't use him.
I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
I wouldn't either. I agree with
a 10-foot pole.
At this time, he'd have to show me that he's got sense. Stephen A. Smith said something that I thought was great. He's a master of avoiding work. He was 5 games now. He didn't go to the bubble when they had to go to the bubble. Didn't get the vaccine, and then he left and went to a birthday party one time.
You know why? Because that's what he wanted to do.
All right. Well, I'm not sure I would allow that on my team.
$30 million a year.
Yeah, get rid of him then. Shit.
Maybe he should be gotten rid of.
And we might be interested in LA. Okay, so give me I want to go around the panel. Give me your biggest surprises in the NBA so far this season. I'm going to start with you, Larry. What's your biggest surprise so far in the NBA?
Well, you listed a couple in a program, Utah and Cleveland and Portland. On a positive side, also I would throw Denver in there too. On the negative side, you talked about Golden State and Brooklyn and Miami. All of them had the same record. So it seems like the league is kind of topsy-turvy right now.
How about you, Earl? What's your biggest surprise or surprises of the early season?
I think we left out a team with positivity with San Antonio, or have they fallen off and I'm just not up to date?
I think they've kind of fallen back a little bit.
That's what, at least I realized that there was a possibility of that. Okay. I'm surprised. The biggest surprise to me is Golden State, because I don't see what the fight between the two of them will end up making them play the way that they playing. I mean, they don't look that strong, even though I think that they will go back to the championship eventually, but currently they do not look well to me.
Steph had 47 the other night, and they just beat the Kings by 3.
Yeah.
So they're still trying to figure it out. I think those bench players aren't as strong this year. Kuminga and those guys, I don't think they're having the same year. I don't even think Wiggins is having the same year. But anyway, who I don't care. David, any thoughts any early thoughts about the season? Your biggest surprise?
Guys, early on at this point, to me, the unquestioned surprise for me is the Utah Jazz.
I agree.
It's supposed to be taken,
they
right?
lost 2 all-star players. Rudy Gobert, who is always your defensive center of the year, and Donovan Mitchell, who is tearing it up for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yes.
You lose those 2 players who are very impactful, and you still win, and you have the equivalent of nobody on that team, and they're winning.
9-3. They're 9-3. They're not just winning; they're doing
That's
really,
the
really
surprise at this point. Now, are they going to hold up for the rest of the year? I don't know that,
right.
But I just have a feeling that this year is a different year for the NBA. We're seeing the struggles of Golden State. We're seeing the struggles of Philadelphia. We're seeing the struggles of Brooklyn. Boston lost their head coach.
Miami's struggling.
It would be nice. Miami struck. It would be nice if some team out of nowhere, kind of like the Cincinnati Bengals, were to finally win a damn big NBA championship. I would like to see that. And maybe that team is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't be coming out of nowhere. I think we knew they were a good team.
Memphis Grizzlies deserve to get some dap, and the Milwaukee. Milwaukee,
they're solid. They're solid.
They got the best player in the world. Period. Yeah. And I've been saying that for the duration of this program, and I've been right. Giannis Antetokounmpo is without question. I don't think we can debate this panel. He's the best player in the world, and he's certainly the best player in the NBA. All right,
he's one of them. He's one of them.
Hey,
Earl, you were on to something, and now Luka is up to 9 straight games at 30 or more. And what's amazing about that, you know who's second? By the way, that's the second longest streak of a guy starting the season 9 in a row. It's the second most. You know who the first most is? Which is kind of amazing.
The first and third is the same person.
Wilton Chamberlain, huh?
He's got 8 as third and 23 for the longest.
Unbelievable, huh?
That was the year he averaged 50 points a game.
Wow. So, yeah, Luka's off to a great start. Now, can he sustain that? I don't know, but he is off to a hell of a start.
Yes.
One thing I had
a hell of a career.
Maybe this is not fair. I always joke and say he's kind of like the closest thing to Larry Bird for me, since Larry Bird played. The thing about Larry Bird, though, he was surrounded by a lot of great players. I just don't think Dallas has a bunch of great players, and I just don't know if Luka can sustain that. And I think other coaches around the league will take him out the game, double him up or something of that nature. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Dude knows how to play.
He does.
As slow and methodical as Luka is, he just gets it done.
I don't think
you can almost see him in slow motion take a move, and they don't even stop it. He's a talented guy.
All right, so we're going to move on. Unless anybody has anything else about the NBA we would like to jump in and add, or any thoughts.
Yeah, I got
Go ahead,
a couple
Larry.
Things. What's the guy? The rookie Pio.
From Orlando.
Rancho, yeah, the guy that played for Duke.
From Duke.
Having a great season.
He is having.
He's averaging about 24 points a game. Their team is not that successful, but I've been watching him on League Pass. Every night he shows up. I had no idea he'd be this impactful in the pros.
Right.
He's by far the best rookie. The next, probably the closest guy to him is a guy in Benedict, plays for Indiana.
Oh, from Indianapolis.
Yeah. He's having
Benedict Mathurin.
He's probably averaging around 19 or 20, but Rancho is really
off to a good start. He really is. But he's 6'10", 250 and can do a lot of things. He's 6'10", 250 and can do a lot of things.
He can flat out play.
I don't disagree
flat
with
out play, yeah.
Right. Anybody else have any thoughts about the NBA before we move on to the World Series?
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, let's touch on the World Series real quick. I think everyone on this panel, I could be wrong, but I think everyone on this panel is happy for Dusty and him winning his first title. And that was very impressive. I saw today where he signed. He'll be back next year as the manager of the Astros. And maybe I just started watching it closely. But, man, aren't the Astros a strong team?
Yeah,
Larry, what do you think? I mean,
how the World Series 5 years in a row? They got to be pretty good.
They were down 2 games to 1 to Philly, and they just after that they didn't miss a beat.
But look at this. They were the top team in the American League, and I was having this debate with someone. I was telling them this was David versus Goliath. Okay, Philly was the number 7 seed, number 1 seed in the American League. Houston, the first 2 series they didn't even lose a game. They swept the Seattle, and then they swept the Yankees. Then they jumped on Philly 5-0, but
lost that lead.
Philly
Lost that game. Right. How about you, Earl? Any thoughts about that series? I just was really impressed with their pitching, hitting, coaching, everything about the Astros.
No, they're just good.
They are good.
It's a good team. It's hard to beat them.
Oh man, they lost Cabrera, Carlos Cabrera, the shortstop, who was really good for them. Then they replaced that guy with this guy,
Pena.
Oh my God, he was MVP of the ALCS and the World Series.
Yeah.
David, any thoughts about the World Series?
I'm happy for the Astros. They have been the best team in baseball for the last number of years, and I'm just ecstatic for Dusty Baker. You know, a guy that, you know, a lot of folks kind of written off. He can take a team only but so far. You know, ask the Lerner family in Washington, D.C., how they treated Dusty Baker. You know, he's never been given his proper due, and winning. And I think, you know, when we opened the show, I talked about what a head coach, and that's what a manager is, a head coach. Dusty's not hitting anymore. His playing days are many years ago. But what he does do is he brings a sense of confidence and understanding to a team, and leadership. That's so important. And that's what Dusty Baker does. And he does it in a quiet, understanding, understated way. And I'm so happy for him, and I'm happy for the Astros. And I hope and pray all the stuff about the cheating, because there's only a handful of players left who were part of that. Houston's just good. Period.
Oh my God. They're scouting, and however they find these players, I don't know what they're doing, how they do it, but my God, their team looks. I mean, they threw a no-hitter, a combined no-hitter, and the Christian, the guy who started that game, he's their fourth starter, and so. Mm-hmm. I don't know. They could be on a dynasty run. It'll be interesting to see what happens next year.
I don't know what David said about Dusty. The other thing that he's 72 years old and he can relate to today's players. And remember last week we were talking about how much the game has changed from when we were watching. Yeah, he's older than we are. Yeah. But he's always, no matter where he's gone, he seems to be able to deal with the players that he has to deal with.
And everybody you listen to says nothing but great things about him. How cool he is, how conversations about wine or cigars or whatever it is.
Where the party is.
It's just so cool. Right. I like that. Well, listen, we're getting close to the end of the show. I want to spend a second and go around the panel to see if anyone has any closing remarks, unless you have something else to say that you want to say about the World Series. If not, we'll start with Larry. You have any closing remarks, Mr. Abels?
Gosh, I was going to say one last thing about baseball. Last week you mentioned that baseball was different, and I sort of drew the analogy. You said no more singles or doubles.
Right.
I said, yeah, they want to. It's like the 3-point shot basketball, right? The other thing is pitching. Okay, and I love Dusty, but one night he puts the guy McCullers. He gives up 5 home runs. He doesn't take him out of the game. The very next night, the guy's throwing a no-hitter, and he gets taken out. And you had mentioned something in your write-up about
Waller.
Right.
They took him out of the game when he was really pitching well.
Yes.
And they brought the guy in, three-run shot. That was a turning point I thought that was a big tough. They let analytics manage the game.
You're right. Baseball has changed.
Right. Earl, any closing comments? Earl, you do look good today, babe.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate it. No, I have no closing comments. I think our time's just about up anyway. So,
David, any closing comments, my friend?
I do have a closing remark, and it's about it's in tribute at this point in time of Marcus Freeman, the head coach of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 6-3 finally, and I was worried about it. But I think what he has done is he's gone beyond that worrying point now, and I believe he is set to have a long stay in South Bend. Excuse me, it's not South Bend where Notre Dame is located. Notre Dame is actually located in Notre Dame, Indiana. They have a special post office. Notre Dame is Notre Dame, Indiana. And I'm so proud and happy for him because it looked like he was heading down the wrong path. And I think he's finally got that team straightened out. So 3 cheers for Marcus Freeman. But I tell you one thing, he better win 9 or 10 games every damn year because that's the Notre Dame standard.
Right. Well, look, I'm gonna try to make this as quick as I can because we're out of time. But Georgetown played Coppin State last night, and they won in overtime. And bless their hearts, Georgetown is the first time they've won this calendar year. They hadn't won in 328 days. They're coached by Patrick Ewing. They played Coppin State, who is coached by Juan Dixon. The reason I mentioned that game is because Patrick Ewing, he's a big deal here in the Washington, D.C. area. He went to 3 Final Twos. His number 33 is retired in New York. He is a big deal. And Juan Dixon, they went to 2 final when he was at Maryland. They went to 2 Final Fours. He won the national championship just like Patrick Ewing. So it was good for the area to see 2 head coaches who brought back memories of the days when Maryland won a national championship and Georgetown won a national championship. And I don't know how well they're going to do this year as head coaches of those 2 teams, but it was just good to see the 2 of them as a basketball fan of the Washington metropolitan area.
Bravo.
On that note, gentlemen, as always, you brung it. You were great. I appreciate that. Thanks, fans, for tuning in tonight. Another wonderful Wednesday night. That concludes our show. We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great weekend.
All righty.
Now, is Earl going to take us out of here?
I think he tried.
He left, but I think the live is still going. We're going to have overtime for people to tune into the special podcast. 60 minutes overtime. Earl, you going to take us out?